All right, still talking about biological explanations for aggression. I'm going to talk about the 4 biological responses to threat. And you might have had this in another class, you know, because it's not just applicable to social psychology. And so we're talking about aggression. The goal of aggression is to survive and to reproduce, at least according to evolutionary psychologists, and that does make sense. You know, why do we do this? We want to survive, we want to keep on living, and we like to pass our genes on. All right. So our bodies inherited biological mechanisms. We don't know exactly, you know, what genes code for what or what the biological mechanisms are, but hypothetical biological mechanisms that select for whatever strategy works in a given situation. So what are the possible strategies that could work in a particular situation? Well, there are 4. And back when I was in college in the 90s, we had a shorter list, but now we have 4 possible biological responses to threat. All right, the first, fight. All right, you may anticipate that the second one is flight. You might have heard of the fight or flight response when we talk about stress response. All right, there are others though. The third is freezing. And the fourth, which I did not learn about in college, but tend and befriend. So let's talk a little bit more about these. All right, so what if your response is to fight? What do you do when you fight? Well, you fight back. This is like another animal running at a particular animal, and they get ready for a fight. Yeah, you know, they are ready for attack. All right, humans can fight too. It doesn't necessarily have to be a fist fight. It could be verbal fighting back, like, hey, you stop that right now. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep berating you until you stop that. All right, those are fight type of responses. What would a flight type of response? It could be running away. All right, like if you don't feel safe in the area where you live, one thing you could do is you could try to fight for change, or you could leave and go to a different area if that's possible for you. All right, and you could just be like, I'm going to run away. You know, it could be just leaving a fight, like, hey, you want to go? You want to go? No, I don't. and trying to escape the situation. All right, so fleeing, running away, leaving the situation, that would be flight. All right, so fight, flight, freeze. This is your deer in the headlights. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Don't know what to do. Maybe they'll forget I'm here. All right, and sometimes humans have a freeze reaction too, like, I don't know what to do. I feel like I should do something. I feel threatened. I feel uneasy right now. I don't know what to do, so I'm gonna do nothing because I don't know how to proceed, or I'm so overwhelmed. You know, my physiological arousal is so high that I can't even mobilize my resources, and I'm overwhelmed. All right, so that you can have a freeze response. Now, what is tend and befriend? That is when you become extra protective of children, young ones, offspring, you know, and sometimes in times of war, crisis, other types of threat, you know, parents or older family members, neighbors, they will get very protective of the children, the vulnerable around them, and then befriend. Like, hey friends, I feel threatened. I'm going to get support from my friendship relationships. I need some social support. I am overwhelmed. I'm feeling threatened. Can we benefit from our social support network here? Yeah. Kids, are you okay? All right, so you can have a tend and befriend response where you tend to the young ones, and you befriend is, you know, capitalizing on your social support network to try to get, you know, get comfort, assistance, help in those situations. All right, so other issues with biological mechanisms of aggression. We also see that when we look at those who are particularly likely to be aggressive later on. Like, so looking at human beings, do we have predictors? Do we have like childhood and adolescent predictors of who is going to be an aggressive adult? And one area, you know, one strictly biological area that has some interesting results in research is resting heart rate. All right, how much does your heart rate go up in certain situations? And we see that low resting heart rate at age 11 is a strong predictor of delinquency, rule breaking, law breaking, criminality at age 21. And so people have interpreted this result, all right? So if you have a low resting heart rate, you don't get easily upset. All right, so you don't get easily upset with things. Outward calm seems to correlate with aggression. All right, now, and that whole body of research, it is quite complicated, and you could take a whole class on, you know, a graduate seminar or something on that body of research. But, you know, there is that aspect that people who are very likely to be criminal or aggressive later on, that they have these early biological markers. In fact, some researchers will study something called callous unemotional traits in children and adolescents. You know, and they will show them stimuli that are usually very upsetting to most individuals, like upsetting pictures and things. And those with the callous unemotional or CU traits, they'll just kind of look at it like, oh, am I supposed to be upset by this? They don't have that same reaction. You know, it's like they don't have that same sort of response that seems to keep other people from amping up to these later disturbing behaviors. All right, what else biologically can explain, or at least partially explain, aggression? All right, drugs. Certain drugs make you more aggressive. Sometimes I'll ask a class, I'll say, okay guys, what do you think are the drugs that are most linked to aggression? And people will name all sorts of drugs, but often one of the last ones to be mentioned is alcohol. Alcohol's tops, folks. A lot of people forget that alcohol counts as a drug. Just because it's legal once you're a certain age, doesn't mean it's not a drug. More than any other drug, alcohol is implicated in aggressive behavior. And we have this thing called the alcohol disinhibition hypothesis. If you have ever been drunk, if you have ever been under the influence of alcohol, you may remember that you may have said or done things that you normally would not do. It lowers your inhibition. It takes your filter away is one way to think about it. And so the alcohol disinhibition hypothesis proposes that alcohol interferes with the brain's ability to suppress violent behavior. It takes away that filter, so not only are you saying embarrassing things and doing embarrassing things, but possibly engaging in aggressive behaviors that normally you would stop yourself from engaging in. All right, and hormones. Testosterone. Higher levels of testosterone are associated with aggressive behavior. It is a small but positive correlation, and you may be familiar that when we look at sex differences, that those with biological male anatomy, that they typically have higher testosterone, even though there are some exceptions. There are some conditions where you could have higher testosterone or lower testosterone, testosterone is generally correlated with aggression. I mean, when you look at those that are boys, assigned male at birth, when they go through male puberty, there is often an increase in things like fights and arguments and getting in trouble in school for that sort of behavior. Some of that can be explained by the increase in testosterone. Doesn't explain everything, but partial explanation. All right, next video is going to be about cultural explanations for aggression.